My stepfather said I wasn't his blood. Turns out I was a missing child for 33 years. Why didn't you put out a public search? I asked. Why didn't you release my name and photograph to the media? Theron's voice was barely audible. Because I believed my son was dead. The investigators told me there was no body because the fire burned too hot to leave remains. I accepted it. I buried an empty casket beside my wife and mourned you both. I mourned you for 27 years, Callum. I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. He stepped forward and took my scarred hands in his own. His grip was firm but gentle, the hands of a man who had spent decades building things with careful precision. I need to know for certain, he said. I believe you're my son. Everything tells me you are, but I need proof that neither of us can doubt. Will you take a DNA test? I looked at this man who might be my father. I saw decades of grief etched into the lines of his face. I saw hope fighting against the fear of disappointment. I saw a man who had never stopped searching for a son the world told him was dead. And I saw myself in 30 years if I walked away without knowing the truth. Yes, I said. I'll take the test. 3 days later, I sat in my apartment staring at my phone. The laboratory had promised results within 72 hours. When the email arrived, I couldn't bring myself to open it for almost an hour. Finally, I clicked. The result was a 99.998% paternity match. Declan Morse, the abandoned foster kid with no past and no family, was Callum Theron Ashby. I was the missing son of a billionaire. I was the child everyone believed had died in a fire 27 years ago. I was not nobody. I had never been nobody. I sat in my cold apartment and wept until I had nothing left. Finding our way together. The weeks following the DNA confirmation didn't transform my life the way you might expect. I still woke up in my one-bedroom apartment. I still drove my 12-year-old Honda to work. I still supervised the loading dock at Granger Furniture Distribution, moving sofas and bed frames while my coworkers talked about football and weekend plans. But something inside me had shifted. The hollow space that had lived in my chest for as long as I could remember didn't ache anymore. It was filling slowly with something I had never allowed myself to feel before, belonging. Theron and I agreed to take things slow. Neither of us knew how to be father and son after 27 years of separation. We couldn't just pick up where we left off, because there was no where we left off. I was a toddler when I disappeared from his life. He was a stranger when he walked into mine. Our first real conversation happened at a diner halfway between Columbus and the Ashby estate, neutral territory. Theron ordered black coffee and didn't touch it. I ordered pancakes because I had no idea what else to do with my hands. I don't expect you to call me Dad, Theron said. I don't expect anything from you, Callum. Declan. Whatever name feels right to you. Declan, I said. That's who I've been for most of my life. I'm not ready to let go of that. He nodded slowly. Declan, then. I just want the chance to know you, whatever that looks like. However long it takes. I don't know how to do this, I admitted. I've never had a father, not a real one. Theron wrapped his hands around his untouched coffee cup. I don't know how to do this either. I've spent 27 years being a father to a ghost. Talking to you, sitting across from you, watching you breathe is more than I ever thought I would have again. So, we'll figure it out together. We started with weekly dinners, phone calls that were awkward at first, filled with long silences and false starts. But gradually, the silences became comfortable. The conversations became real. He asked about my life, my work, my friends, my dreams. He didn't try to fix anything or offer money or sweep me into his world of wealth and privilege. He just listened. I told Pauline everything. She sat on her porch swing while I explained about the party, the vase, the scars, the DNA test, all of it. When I finished, she was crying, but not from sadness. I always knew you were meant for something, Declan, she said. I never knew what. Now I understand. You were meant to find your way home. I hugged her for a long time. She had given me a home when no one else would. She had loved me when I believed I was unlovable. Finding Theron didn't erase what she meant to me. If anything, it made me appreciate her more. I finished my HVAC certification 3 months later. Not because I needed the money anymore, Theron had already made it clear that I would never want for anything financially, but because I needed to complete what I had started. I needed to prove to myself that I could build something with my own hands, even now that I knew where those hands came from. Theron came to the graduation ceremony. He sat in the back row of a community college auditorium, surrounded by working-class families and blue-collar dreams. He wore a simple jacket instead of his usual expensive suits. And when they called my name, he clapped louder than anyone else in the room. Afterward, he shook my hand and said, "I'm proud of you." 3 words. They broke something open inside me that I didn't know was still closed. The scars and the truth. I think about my mother sometimes, Vivian. The woman who gave birth to me, tried to kill me, saved me, and died alone on a dark road while I waited for someone to find me. I don't know how to feel about her. I probably never will. She was sick in ways nobody understood at the time. She made an unforgivable choice and then made a miraculous one. Both things are true, and I have to carry them together. The scars on my hands used to feel like a burden. Evidence of something terrible that happened to me before I could remember. A mark of abandonment. A question with no answer. Now I see them differently. They are proof that I survived. They are the reason Theron recognized me across a crowded room 27 years after he lost me. They are the map that led me home. My name is Declan Morse. It is also Callum Ashby. For 27 years, I thought I was nobody. I thought I came from nowhere. I thought the hollow space inside me would never be filled. I was wrong about all of it. If you're watching this and you feel like nobody is looking for you, like you don't matter, like your past is a locked door with no key, I want you to hear me. Your story isn't over. The answers you're searching for might be searching for you, too. And sometimes the scars you carry aren't just damage, they're proof that you survived long enough to find the truth. Don't give up. Keep going. Your turning point might be one broken vase away. If this story moved you, hit that like button and share it with someone who needs to hear it today. Drop a comment below and tell me your story. I read every single one. And if you're not subscribed yet, join this family so you never miss another video. Click that subscribe button and the notification bell so you're the first to know when the next story drops. Thank you for watching. Thank you for listening. And thank you for reminding me that none of us are really alone. I'll see you in the next one. Is there a particular element of Callum's new life, such as his relationship with Theron or the legal aspects of his identity change, you would like to explore next? I was 6, old enough to understand death, but too young to grasp how completely it would reshape my world. We're going to be okay, baby, Diane had whispered at the funeral, holding me so tight I could barely breathe. Mommy's going to take care of everything. 2 years later, she introduced me to Roy. He was a supervisor at the power company, made decent money, and had a 4-bedroom house with a pool. To my mother, he must have looked like salvation. To me, he looked like a man counting the cost of taking on another man's son. Roy had a daughter from his first marriage. Melody was 2 years younger than me, pretty and petite like a porcelain doll. From the moment we moved into Roy's house, the lines were drawn. Melody got dance lessons, new clothes from the mall, and birthday parties at the skating rink with her whole class invited. I got hand-me-downs from the church donation box and quiet birthdays with a grocery store cake. Money doesn't grow on trees, Roy would say when I asked why Melody got things I didn't. Got to prioritize family. The message was clear, I wasn't family. I was an obligation that came with my mother. My grandmother, Ruth Brennan, my father's mother, tried to stay in my life. She'd call every Sunday, send birthday cards with $20 bills tucked inside, and invite me to spend summers at her house in Tampa, but Roy always found reasons why I couldn't go. Boy needs to work, build character, he'd tell my mother. Can't be running off to grandma's every time life gets tough. So instead of summers with Ruth, I spent them mowing lawns in the neighborhood, saving every dollar I could. Roy never took my money, I'll give him that. But he made sure I knew that everything I ate, every night I slept under his roof, was charity. Your daddy should have had better life insurance, he'd say after a few beers. A man's got to provide for his family even after he's gone. My mother would shrink into herself when he said things like that, becoming smaller and quieter with each passing year. By the time I was in high school, she was like a ghost in her own home, floating between rooms without making a sound, existing without really living. Melody tried to bridge the gap between us. Sometimes she'd sneak me cookies from the batch she and Roy made together or let me watch TV in her room when Roy monopolized the living room. But she was a kid, too, navigating her own relationship with a father who measured love by possessions and blood relations. The day I turned 18 fell on a Friday. I came home from my shift at the grocery store to find 2 duffel bags by the front door, packed with my clothes, my few books, and a manila envelope containing my birth certificate and social security card. "You're a man now," Roy announced from his recliner, not even bothering to stand up. "Time to make your own way in the world. Not my responsibility anymore." Never really were, if we're being honest. I looked at my mother standing in the kitchen doorway with a dish towel twisted in her hands. "Mom." She opened her mouth, closed it, then turned and walked back into the kitchen. That was all the goodbye I got. Melody ran out as I was loading my bags into my beat-up Honda Civic. "I'm sorry," she sobbed, throwing her arms around me. "I'm so sorry, Colton. This isn't right." "Not your fault, Mel," I told her, meaning it. "You take care of yourself, okay?" That was 15 years ago. Since then, I'd worked every job that would have me, saved every penny I could, and built a life that might not have been much, but was entirely mine. No handouts, no charity, no depending on anyone else ever again. Until the lumber mill closed. Until the forklift accident that tore up my shoulder. Until the medical bills started arriving like an avalanche of red ink. Until I found myself here in this government office, about to discover that my entire independent life had been built on a foundation of someone else's identity. The Medicaid office felt smaller with every passing second. Mrs. Dolores Vega, the clerk, kept glancing between her computer screen and my face like she was trying to solve an impossible equation. The normal office sounds around us, keyboards clicking, phones ringing, seemed to fade into a distant hum. "Just need temporary coverage until I find work," I repeated, trying to keep my voice steady. "The mill's reopening in the spring. I've got a call back lined up." Mrs. Vega nodded absently, her fingers moving across the keyboard. "I'll need your social security number, Mr. Brennan." I recited the 9 digits I'd memorized since my first job application at 18, 579-42-1836. The numbers that had defined my existence in every government database, every employment record, every tax return I'd ever filed. Her fingers stopped mid-type. She deleted what she'd entered and typed again, slower this time. Her brow furrowed. She leaned closer to the screen, then suddenly pulled back like it had burned her. "Mr. Brennan, there seems to be an issue with your social security number." "What kind of issue?" My hands gripped the edge of her desk. "I've used this number for 15 years. Never had a problem before." She turned her monitor slightly away from me, but I caught a glimpse of red text, warning symbols, something that definitely wasn't a normal processing screen. "Sir, this number was flagged by Interpol in 1994. "Interpol?" The word came out too loud. Several people in the waiting room turned to stare. "That's the international police, right? Why would they care about my social security number?" Mrs. Vega picked up her desk phone, pressing numbers with shaking fingers. It belongs to a child who was reported deceased in 1994. A child named Colton James Brennan, who died in a trucking accident along with his father. The floor seemed to tilt beneath my chair. That's impossible. My father died in a trucking accident, yes, but that was 1997. September 1997. I was 6 years old. I remember the funeral. I remember my mother crying. I remember the casket. Sir, please remain seated. Her voice had taken on an official tone, the kind people use when situations spiral beyond normal protocol. Mr. Randolph, can you come to Station 3 immediately? Yes, it's urgent. It's about the flagged SSN. The security guard near the exit shifted his position, hand resting on his radio. Other applicants were openly staring now, some pulling out their phones. I could feel sweat beading on my forehead, running down my back despite the aggressive air conditioning. Look, if there's a problem with my paperwork, I can come back. I started to stand, but Mrs. Vega held up her hand. Sir, I need you to stay exactly where you are. This is a serious matter. A minute later, Bernard Randolph arrived. He was tall, late 50s, with the kind of authoritative presence that came from decades of dealing with government bureaucracy. His gray suit was impeccable, his face professionally neutral, until he looked at the screen. Then his composure cracked. He stared at the monitor, then at me, then back at the monitor. He pulled reading glasses from his pocket and leaned in closer. His face went through a series of expressions, confusion, recognition, then something that looked like awe. Dear God, he whispered. Then, louder and more controlled, addressing Mrs. Vega, locked down his file immediately. Don't call anyone else. I need to make a very specific phone call first. Mr. Randolph, what's happening? I stood despite their protests. I haven't done anything wrong. I'm just trying to get medical coverage. He studied my face with an intensity that made me uncomfortable. Mr. Brennan, is that the name you've always used? Since birth. Colton James Brennan. My mother is Diane Brennan, maiden name Hollis. My father was Thomas Brennan. And your father died when? September 15, 1997. Jacksonville Highway. His truck jackknifed in a storm. Randolph wrote something down, his movements precise and careful. How old were you? 6, almost 7. Do you have any memories from before that age? The question threw me. Of course. Birthday parties, Christmas mornings, playing in our apartment complex playground. Why? Specific memories, details. I thought hard. The memories were there, but fuzzy, like looking through frosted glass. I remember a yellow kitchen. My mother singing while she cooked. My father's laugh. Mr. Brennan, Randolph said slowly, choosing each word with care. The social security number you've been using belonged to a 3-year-old child who died in 1994. That child's name was Colton James Brennan. His father was Thomas Brennan. They died together in a trucking accident, but it was 3 years earlier than you remember, and the child was 3 years younger than you claimed to have been. My phone buzzed in my pocket. Unknown number. Against my better judgment, I pulled it out and read the text message that would change everything. Stay where you are. Your real mother has been looking for you for 30 years. Agent Patricia Morris, FBI, Missing Children Division. The waiting room spun. Mrs. Vega was saying something about protocol. Randolph was on his phone speaking in urgent, quiet tones. The security guard had moved closer. And I stood there, a 33-year-old man who just discovered his entire identity was built on a dead child's name. I sank back into the plastic chair, my legs unsteady, but my voice firm. I don't know what's happening here, but I haven't done anything wrong. If using this social security number is some kind of crime, I had no knowledge of it. Mr. Randolph raised his hand in a calming gesture. Mr. Brennan, nobody is accusing you of a crime. Please sit back down. We need to understand what's happening here. Is that even your real name? Mrs. Vega asked quietly. Colton Brennan. It's the only name I've ever known, I said. The security guard had moved closer, but Randolph waved him back. Tell me about your earliest memory, Randolph said, pulling up a chair to sit across from me. Not what you've been told, but what you actually remember. I closed my eyes, trying to push past the panic to think clearly. A yellow kitchen, sunflowers on the wallpaper, my mother singing, "You Are My Sunshine," while making breakfast. But when I try to focus on details, they slip away. How about friends from childhood before age 6? I opened my eyes. I don't know. We moved a lot, my mother said. After my father died, we couldn't afford to stay anywhere long. But you said your father died when you were 6. Why would you have moved a lot before that? The inconsistency hit me like cold water. I don't know. That doesn't make sense. Randolph leaned forward. Mr. Brennan, I'm going to tell you something that will be hard to hear. The patterns in your early memories, the inconsistencies, the fact that you're using a deceased child's identity, all point to one possibility. You may have been abducted as a young child and raised under a false identity. That's insane. The words came out automatically, but even as I said them, pieces were clicking into place. Roy's immediate hostility toward me, the way my mother could never look me in the eye when talking about my father, the complete absence of photos from before age 7. My phone buzzed again. Another text from Agent Morris. Federal Building, 200, West Washington Street, 3rd floor. Your birth parents are flying in from Phoenix. They've been searching for you since 1991. I showed the text to Randolph. He read it and nodded. I just got off the phone with the FBI. They've been tracking this case. Mr. Brennan, or whoever you are, you need to go with them. But first, I need to ask you something important. The woman who raised you, Diane, where is she now? I don't know. After Roy threw me out, I cut all contact. Last I heard from my half-sister Melody, Mom and Roy divorced about 5 years ago. Mom moved somewhere out west. Oregon, Randolph said, reading from his phone. The FBI already has her in custody. She was living under the name Diana Henderson. She's been wanted for kidnapping since 1991. The room tilted again. She's been arrested? Mr. Brennan, your name isn't Colton. The real Colton Brennan died with his father when he was 3. Diane was his mother. After losing her son, she apparently took another child to replace him. You. I thought about all the times my mother had held me just a little too tight, looked at me with eyes full of something I'd thought was love, but now recognized might have been guilt or fear, or both. Roy knew, I said suddenly, the realization hitting me like a physical blow. That's why he hated me. That's why he threw me out the second I turned 18. He found out somehow. Randolph nodded. According to the FBI, Roy Hatcher contacted them this morning after seeing news of Diane's arrest. He said she confessed to him when you were 17. She begged him to wait until you were legally an adult before doing anything. So he agreed, on the condition that I leave and never come back. So instead of telling me the truth, he just threw me away. Anger rose in my chest, hot and familiar. Let me spend 15 years believing I was worthless, unwanted, not his blood, when the real issue was that I was stolen from someone else's blood. The FBI agents can explain everything, Randolph said, standing. They have DNA evidence, photographs, a complete case file. Your real name is Logan Wade Palmer. Your parents are Jennifer and Mitchell Palmer from Phoenix. You were taken from a grocery store parking lot when you were 6 months old. I stood on legs that felt like they belonged to someone else. My parents, my real parents. They're alive. Very much so. They never stopped looking for you. Your mother runs a foundation for missing children. Your father is a retired mechanic. You have a younger brother named Dean who was born after you disappeared. Mrs. Vega printed something and handed it to me. It was a photo from a website. A family standing together at what looked like a charity event. The woman had my eyes, my exact shade of green. The man had my jaw, my build. The younger man between them looked like someone I might see in the mirror in a different life. They never gave up, Mrs. Vega said softly. 33 years and they never stopped believing you were alive. I looked at the photo of strangers who were apparently my blood. All that mattered was that somewhere in Phoenix, two people were getting on a plane to meet the son they'd never stopped loving, never stopped searching for, never stopped believing would come home. Take me to them, I said to Randolph. Take me to the FBI. I need to know everything. Agent Morris and the truth. 2 hours later, I sat in a federal building conference room that smelled of coffee and old carpet. Agent Patricia Morris, a woman in her 40s with kind eyes and an efficient manner, spread photographs across the table like she was dealing cards. Each image revealed another piece of a life I'd never known existed. Your name is Logan Wade Palmer, she began, sliding the first photo toward me. A young couple holding a baby, both beaming at the camera. The woman's green eyes were identical to mine, down to the small fleck of gold in the left one. You were born March 15, 1991, in Phoenix, Arizona. You were 6 months old when you were taken. I picked up the photo with trembling hands. The woman holding the baby was undeniably connected to me. Same nose, same crooked smile, same way of tilting her head slightly when happy. September 18, 1991, Agent Morris continued, pulling out a police report. Your mother, Jennifer Palmer, was loading groceries in a Safeway parking lot. A woman approached her, asking for help with directions. While Jennifer was distracted, someone else took you from the shopping cart. The whole thing took less than 30 seconds. We now know that woman was Diane Hollis. She pulled out another document. Diane's real son, Colton James Brennan, died with his father, Thomas, in that trucking accident. But here's what you don't know. It wasn't September, it was March. And the child was 3, not 6. So, all your memories of being 6 when your father died? Fabricated. She explained that Diane likely told me the story so many times that my brain created false memories to match. It's more common than you'd think in child abduction cases. Young children accept what they're told as truth and build their identity around it. Agent Morris pulled up something on her tablet. A woman, late 50s, still beautiful despite the wear of decades of grief. Her eyes were red from crying, but there was hope in them, desperate and bright. This is Jennifer Palmer today, your mother. Your real mother. She never stopped looking. Never. She runs the Palmer Foundation for Missing Children. They've helped find over 200 missing kids in the past 3 decades. Your father, Mitchell, retired early from his mechanic shop to help run it. Your younger brother, Dean, was born 3 years after you disappeared. He's 30 now, works as a contractor in Scottsdale. She swiped to another photo. A man in his 30s who looked like me if I'd lived a different life. They're all here. I asked. In this building? In the next room. They flew in the moment we called. Logan, there's something else you need to know. Agent Morris pulled out one more document. Roy Hatcher has been cooperating fully. He told us everything. What did he know? When you were 17, Diane got drunk one night and confessed everything. She told Roy you weren't really Colton, that she'd taken you after her son died because she couldn't bear the emptiness. Roy was going to turn her in immediately, but she begged him. She said you only had 1 year left of high school. Asked him to let you finish, become a legal adult before your world imploded. So he agreed to wait, then threw me out instead. He thought he was protecting you from the truth. In his twisted way, he believed making you independent was better than letting you find out your entire life was a lie while you were still a minor. That's why he always said I wasn't his blood. He knew I wasn't anyone's blood, at least, not who he thought. Agent Morris shook her head. You're wrong. You are someone's blood. You're Jennifer and Mitchell Palmer's blood. They've been bleeding for 33 years waiting for this moment. She stood up, walked to the door. Are you ready? I nodded, though ready was the last thing I felt. The door opened and time stopped. Jennifer Palmer stood there, frozen in the doorway. She was smaller than I'd expected, maybe 5'4", but her presence filled the room. Her hand covered her mouth, and tears streamed down her face. Behind her, Mitchell Palmer, tall and solid, gripped the door frame like he might collapse without it. My boy, Jennifer whispered, the words barely audible. My baby boy. She took a step forward, then another, moving like she was afraid I might disappear if she moved too fast. When she reached me, her hand came up slowly, touching my face like she was making sure I was real. You have your grandfather's chin, she said, laughing through her tears. I always wondered if you'd grow up to look like him. Mitchell moved forward then, his movements careful and measured. Logan, he said, his voice rough with emotion. We never gave up. Not for a single day. I don't remember you, I said, hating how it sounded, but needing to be honest. I'm sorry, but I don't remember any of you. You were 6 months old, Jennifer said, her hand still on my face. We don't expect you to remember. We just wanted you to come home. Then she pulled me into a hug, and something inside me that had been frozen for 33 years began to thaw. Mitchell's arms came around both of us, and I was surrounded by something I hadn't felt since before Roy threw me out. Maybe ever did. It wasn't just love. It was belonging. Real, blood-deep belonging. Behind them, Dean appeared in the doorway, hanging back, but watching with eyes that mirrored mine. My brother, my actual brother. We have so much to tell you, Jennifer whispered against my shoulder. So much time to make up for. But first, welcome home, Logan. Welcome home. 3 months later, I stood in what had been my nursery in Phoenix. Jennifer, my real mother, had kept it exactly as it was the day I disappeared. The crib still held the teddy bear she'd bought for my first Christmas. The walls still displayed the alphabet border she'd painted herself while pregnant. In the closet hung tiny clothes that had waited 33 years for a baby who never came home. I couldn't change it, Jennifer said from the doorway. Mitchell wanted to after 10 years, but I knew you'd come back. A mother knows. The Palmer house was nothing like Roy's cold, divided home. Family photos covered every surface, including dozens of age progression photos of what I might look like at 5, 10, 15, 20. They'd celebrated my birthday every year with a cake and an empty chair. Dean told me he'd grown up talking to his missing brother, sharing his secrets with my photo, promising to teach me to ride a bike when I came home. The truth about Diane had been harder to process. She'd been sentenced to 15 years for kidnapping. During her confession, she broke down completely, describing how she'd lost her mind after her son's death. She'd been at that same grocery store, saw me alone in the cart for just a moment, and made a decision that destroyed multiple lives. She'd used her dead son's identity for me, moved constantly for the first few years to avoid detection, and eventually believed her own lies so completely that she almost forgot I wasn't really Colton. Roy had gotten probation for not reporting the crime when he learned about it. Melody reached out after seeing the news coverage. I always wondered why Dad hated you so much, she said when we met for coffee. Now I understand. He was scared of the truth coming out. Scared of Mom going to prison. Scared of losing everything. He chose the coward's way out. We're building something like a sibling relationship now, though it's complicated by the knowledge that her mother stole me from mine. A new purpose. The Palmers didn't just give me a family. They gave me a purpose. The foundation Jennifer started had been her way of channeling grief into action. Now I work there, too, using my story to give hope to other families. We found 12 missing children in the past year. Each reunion heals something in Jennifer and in me, too. Dean and I work construction together now. He owns a contracting company and immediately brought me on as a partner. 30 years is a long time to be an only child, he said on my first day. I've got a lot of brother stuff saved up. He wasn't kidding, weekend fishing trips, teaching me to restore cars with Mitchell. Family dinners where no one counts whose blood is whose because we all belong. My grandmother, Ruth, who thought she was my biological grandmother all those years, still calls me her grandson. When she learned the truth, she drove straight to Phoenix. I don't care what DNA says, she told the Palmers. I loved this boy for 25 years. That makes him mine, too. The Palmers welcomed her into the family without hesitation. Now, I have more grandmothers than I know what to do with. The $47 I had in my wallet that day at the Medicaid office sits framed on my desk at the foundation. It reminds me that rock bottom can sometimes be a launching pad. The lumber mill injury that forced me to seek help. The settlement money went straight into the foundation. We used it to upgrade our age progression software and hire a full-time investigator. But the biggest revelation came from studying my case file. The grocery store where I was taken had been investigated 3 times. Each time, they were one interview away from finding Diane. One customer saw her but didn't think it was important enough to report. One security guard noticed the van but didn't write down the license plate. One person could have changed everything, but didn't. Now, when I speak at foundation events, I tell people this: if you see something, say something. That feeling in your gut that something's wrong, trust it. You might be the one person who brings someone home. I spent 33 years as Colton Brennan, living as a ghost of a boy who died in 1994. I was thrown away at 18 by a man who said I wasn't his blood, not knowing I was someone else's blood. Someone who never stopped searching, never stopped hoping, never stopped loving me. Sometimes the worst moments of our lives are really just doors to who we're meant to be. That broken social security number didn't just reveal my past. It gave me a future, a real family, a purpose, a truth worth more than any lie, no matter how long I lived it. The boy who was told he was nobody's blood discovered he was somebody's everything, and that somebody had been waiting 33 years to say just one word: welcome. Every story of loss can become a story of finding. Every lie we live leaves breadcrumbs back to the truth. Sometimes it just takes a government clerk, a flag number, and the courage to follow those breadcrumbs home. I was Logan Palmer all along. I just had to lose everything as Colton Brennan to find it. If this story touched you, please share it with someone who needs to hear it. Leave a comment below with your thoughts and don't forget to subscribe to our channel for more incredible true stories of families reunited against impossible odds. Remember, someone out there might be looking for you.